Thanks very much, Mary Beth, and thanks to all the attendees. Really excited and thankful for this opportunity to talk about this presentation, which is entitled Built to be Digital: Tools for Today's Contractor. Just want to introduce myself. My name is Mark Severance. I work as a director of construction sales for RKL eSolutions. RKL works with growing construction companies, specifically with their back office teams, to provide strategic technology to help humans do their best work. So that looks like accounting, job costing, payroll, document management, and so much more. And that's really why I'm excited for this presentation, because I think GBCA members have many, many opportunities to take advantage of technology and to use it strategically in their organization to benefit themselves, their department, and the entire company. So along for the ride today is Ben Hofferman. Ben is a longtime GBCA member, and he'll be joining me sort of towards the end to take some of the Q&A and that interaction that we'll have here in just a little bit. So let's go ahead and talk about our agenda today. We really have three primary topics. The first is which we'll briefly talk about industry trends for 2026. What is happening out there in the wild, and what does it mean for your individual organization? Fundamentally, that leads us into topic number two, which is there are real opportunities to leverage some exciting technology. So we've entitled that topic Opportunity is Knocking. So we'll talk about that briefly, and then we'll spend the bulk of our time talking about how to eat an elephant. Essentially, that's sort of a lighthearted way to be able to say digital transformation and automation in general is a journey. And what does that journey look like? And how can you get started with a plan and then begin to take those steps to recognize some of these very important opportunities? And then at the end, we'll have a Q&A, talk about some of these things, and then we'll let you get back to your day. So, all right, let's start off with industry trends in 2026. Now, Deloitte, the consulting company Deloitte, recently released a report talking about technology trends for the engineering and construction industry. And they had four primary conclusions. The first is tariff uncertainty, and the crowd let out a large groan. Really, are we talking about tariffs and all the uncertainty surrounding it? Well, listen, yes, because it is a thing and it's always an evolving thing, it seems like. But what we want to see is these trends and the corresponding opportunities. So with each four, we've got the conclusion from the Deloitte team, as well as then I've underlined an opportunity that exists within that to be able to say, how are we going to leverage technology in the midst of this reality that we're all facing? So tariff uncertainty, yes, is a thing. And one of the ways that we can take advantage of technology to help reduce that level of uncertainty and risk is digital procurement solutions. Next is a new competitive landscape. Digital transformation is redefining competitiveness, which means that those construction companies who want to thrive going forward are going to need to think seriously about how to embrace AI, which is artificial intelligence, digital innovation, in order to streamline operations and unlock new efficiencies for their people. Now, what is just one simple way that this looks like? This is from another study that was done by AGC and Sage, the usage of mobile applications in construction. Now, on one hand, you say mobile applications, everybody must be utilizing them. And the good news is, yes, 9 out of 10 companies are using or plan to use mobile technologies in their operations. So kudos, that's a great start. We need to have 100% adoption and move it beyond the planning stage. On the right-hand side, you'll see how these mobile technologies are being deployed and how they're being utilized in the field, and you can see that there. So there's opportunity. A lot of companies are taking advantage of it, but a whole lot of room for growth in that regard. Now, back to the Deloitte report, we also see demand shifts. Demand shifts, you've heard of it, of course, with data centers and energy infrastructure reshaping the construction landscape, which means that there's an opportunity for companies to take advantage of it through digital innovation and strategic partnerships. And then last, ongoing changes in the labor market. Again, most likely you've heard about this, you're feeling it, you're seeing it in your organizations and all around you. There's a lot of new workers that are needed and a changing labor force. So, specifically, according to the US Bureau of Labor Statistics, we've got 20% of workers that are 55 and older and approaching retirement. You can see these other statistics here on the screen. Again, I won't read them to you. We really don't want to belabor this fact, other than to say we know that there is an aging workforce and at this point, a smaller percentage of workers who are coming in to fill those gaps. This is reality, which represents risk and opportunity for each contractor. So, what does that mean for my company? Thanks for asking. Risk and opportunity. You've got a kind of a summary of what we've already talked about here at the top. There's a risk and opportunity. Yes, we already talked about tariff uncertainty, so let's not talk about that again. But we also see that with technology, strategic technology can have a transformative impact. And you might roll your eyes when you hear the word technology and transformation, but in this case, we see that it's really true, and companies, even smaller companies, are beginning to adopt some of these technologies, and we want to talk more about these here in the coming minutes. But before we do, we have our first poll, and the poll is designed to be able to increase interaction, and so hopefully you'll answer this poll. But the first poll, we try to start with an easy question. Poll number one, and Mary Beth, if you could list those choices. Why are you here? A, I have no idea. My AI bot assistant insisted I had to attend. B, I'm curious about new technology. C, I'm ready to give my job to a robot, step one of my retirement plan. Or D, I want to be a change agent within my organization in order to strategically leverage modern technology and enable human beings to do their best work. All right. Thank you so much. I'm grateful that people had mentioned B and D. Curiosity, a really, really good thing. I ultimately think that leads to being a change agent, and we'll talk about that more in a couple of minutes. Now, if you were one of the ones that talked about wanting to be a change agent as well as being curious, thank you for that. I'm really grateful nobody selected A. Okay, so let's just say high five for those that answered as they did. There's the virtual high five for all of you, because I believe that beyond just curiosity, everybody here wants to be a change agent, a positive change agent. Certainly, there's positive benefits for you as individuals, for your department, as well as for your organization. Or if you're a trusted advisor on the call today, you want to be able to advise your clients in really strategic and important ways. Okay, let's keep moving. That was our number one topic. The second one, which we'll just cover briefly, is I've already talked about it. I've used that word opportunity a number of times. But given the changes that are taking place, given the technology tools that are available and only going to be getting better, we recognize that there's a significant opportunity and it is knocking. At the same time, we recognize that if it were easy to implement strategic technology tools, everyone would have done it and be done with it and moving on with their lives. So let's just be honest and say there's an opportunity, but there are also barriers. And what are some of those barriers? If opportunity is knocking, why aren't you answering? Or why aren't more construction companies answering? And I just listed about 7 here. There's probably at least 10 more that we could list. But on one hand, everyone's busy. Everyone's busy. Their day jobs keep them very busy and keep them occupied. 2, change is hard. Something about that old adage about old dogs and new tricks. It's difficult to change, and it takes real time and focus. It requires real investments of time and money, and often those are both in short supply. For others, they've been burned in the past. They've gotten momentum, they've gotten approval, they've tried something, and ultimately it didn't work for whatever reason. Maybe the solution was deficient. Maybe ultimately the people didn't buy in, didn't really give it their best effort, and the initiative failed. And now it's like, it's not worth it. We're not doing that again. The other thing that we see often is that there's different priorities or competing agendas. Perhaps the executives have one set of priorities in mind. Those who are doing jobs out in the field have other priorities that are number one on their list. And then the back office folks have a different set of priorities as well. And the differences between all three, it's difficult to reconcile and that impedes progress. And for some, they say, well, we're getting by. We're not we're not in a terrible spot yet, and others are just paralyzed by we don't know where to start. So, whatever the case may be, we just want to acknowledge these and say it's not easy, but there is a way forward, even if you're struggling with one or more of these barriers. So, with that, we're going to go to poll number 2. What are your biggest barriers? What are your biggest barriers to adoption of strategic technology? A, time and money, no sense of urgency, competing priorities, just don't know where to start, all the above, or F, hold on a second, let me ask my AI bot assistant what my biggest barrier is. Okay, thanks for that. Appreciate that. It looks like the majority are saying all of the above. It's kind of a confluence of a lot of these factors, and that's fairly typical. As we see it's not just one, it's typically multiple factors, but we also recognize that for some, it's just, we're getting by and it's okay, or we simply don't know where to start. So hopefully, as we keep moving through the presentation, and here's really where I want to spend the bulk of our time, is how do you get started? How do you think you recognize these barriers and then to say, wait, there's got to be a path forward, and what does it look like? So I'm going to use the analogy of the eating the elephant. And this is the proverbial elephant. How do you eat an elephant? It's one bite at a time. It's an old saying, but I think it works in this situation because it can feel big and daunting if we look at digital automation or transformation in one way only. So I've got three tips, 3 pointers, and where we're going to spend the bulk of the presentation, really the rest of the presentation, on how do you make steps or make strides toward adopting strategic technology. And the very first point is here, and we've got our elephant to accompany us here, is don't let the ultimate goal of digital transformation, which is big and lofty and could be years in the making, don't let it paralyze you from taking that first bite, or to move away from that analogy, taking that first step or adopting a real plan and beginning to implement this digital transformation strategy. Because if, hey, we're at 0 or we're at 10% and we have to get to 100, that can be really daunting. And I want to encourage you today to think about it as a journey and let that long journey begin with a single step. So start with that as a mindset. And then the next step from there is curiosity. I am a big believer in curiosity, really in every part of life. There's so many benefits to it, but in this process specifically, and I'm encouraging everyone to get curious about their people, their products, and their processes. We're going to talk about these 3 Ps. We've alliterated them to help it be as memorable as possible, but to ask very specific, detailed questions and document what you find out to help form your strategy. And then after you've gathered the information and gotten really curious and gotten a lot smarter and gathered that data, then the third thing is to get going. And then we're going to talk about some specific ideas for you to how you can pursue that first step, the plan, and then the first steps along that journey. Okay, so get curious. We're encouraging you today to get curious, and let's start with products. Here's a few questions that you can ask. These are not exhaustive, but I think it'll be a great start for what you have and ultimately where the problems are and where you want to go. The first is just putting a list together of the systems that are in place that your team members are using today. Those often will be applications that you are subscribing to, that you have purchased, that you have an annual license for. You want to document those. But along with those, there's also probably, I'm calling them shadow systems or workarounds. Those that you might not have an official license for, that somebody picked up something on the side or they developed their own workaround for. It's really important to not only document sort of the official systems, then also the unofficial systems as well. Along with that is what type of feedback do your team members have for each of these systems? And if you ask, believe me, they'll have feedback. You want to document that feedback and you want to better understand. Talk to me about what do you think of these systems? Where are they effective? Where are they not effective? Because then you have a better sense for where do the biggest problems lie. Last question that I'll ask here on this slide is, do your current technology publishers have an AI strategy and a roadmap? We're going to talk about AI, artificial intelligence here in just a few minutes in more detail. But the problem is that some of the systems that you may have internally, the systems are so old, the technology is so dated, there's really no way or no effective way for your publishers to incorporate new technology like AI. And so it's important to know, is this the platform of the future, or is the organization going to be inherently limited in adopting these new technologies to say, okay, now we know where there's a limitation, and do we need to think about or reconsider this as our long-term platform? So if there's no strategy or no roadmap or no capability to incorporate that into the future, or they haven't started yet, that's where kind of the alarm bell should probably start ringing in your head and say, maybe we need to think about a new approach or a new platform for this particular area of the organization. Okay, so if you boil it all down, I'd say action item on getting curious about your products, document your current solutions and the feedback that you get from your team members. Now, you also want to get curious about your people, because products are just products, but it's really the people that are utilizing them that you want to care for, that you want to understand what their experience is like. And I've got a number of questions here that are sort of variations of the same question, but what are ways in which your people are held back from doing their best work? In what ways do they feel like they're not able to be as strategic as possible? That when they are forced to do certain things, these systems are more of a hindrance or a barrier to efficiency or to doing their best work than a facilitator. And they'll be able to help you with these things. They know they deal with them perhaps every day or every week or every fiscal period, whatever the case may be. They know and they'll be able to tell you. Another way of looking at this is, what are the tasks or what are the situations when they find themselves thinking or muttering under their breath, there has got to be a better way. Like, it's 2026. There are self-driving cars on the road, and we are still doing this same thing the same way we've been doing it for however many years. There's got to be a better way. Those types of situations. And then to just make it a little bit more graphic, and we'll move on from this, is when do they feel like taking an ice pick to their closest eyeball? When is it like, I can't take this anymore? You want to really dig in with that and understand what are those areas or situations or times of their workday or work week where it is just so frustrating that they are limited in being strategic. So what's an action item on your people? Take away the ice pick. We really want to avoid any workplace injuries, right? Safety first. And then ask these questions. Prepare to take good notes. You probably want to do some sort of an audio recording so that you have that documentation in addition to the applications that you've already documented. Okay, let's keep moving. We want to be curious about our products, our people, and then the processes. And this is really kind of where the intersection of the product and the people takes place. Similar to our last slide here, what are the areas of inefficiency that get lumped into just the way things are around here? if we're saying, why do we do this the way we do? Or why does this data get entered manually several times in different places? Or why do we store this document in all of these different systems? Those types of things. And the answer is, this is just the way that we've always done it. Those are areas to kind of really dig in and say, well, that's not really a great reason, especially as we're trying to be more strategic with our people's time and efforts. Along with those, you can probably just simplify things a little bit and say, in what situations or in what areas or processes do we see too much of the following? Do we see too much paper, manual emails back and forth, text messaging, the same thing, manual data entry in one application, or the same data that's manually entered in multiple places? What are areas or situations where Excel is being utilized in ways that's probably not most efficient? Now, Excel is great and will always be utilized widely, but there's areas where you say, you know what? I should be able to create reports in this system as opposed to dumping the data to Excel and manipulating it every single time. So that may be one thing to explore. And then also timesheets. Are there manual timesheets or employee receipts that you have to be able to gather manually or track people down with? Here's an example. Do any of these look familiar? Paper timesheets. Paper timesheets that people fill out, or even Excel spreadsheets that people fill out with timesheets. But paper's the worst, especially when people don't write very clearly. And what was that? And what job? And cost code? And yikes, this is really confusing, very inefficient, and potentially inaccurate. And then here's a Home Depot receipt, right? Does anyone know what this Home Depot receipt is for? Why it's on the desk, or what job, what cost code, etc. These are all things to look for and say, wait a second, there's a better way from a product, from a people, and from a process standpoint. So as we think about wrapping up sort of being curious about our internal organization, we want to look for all these things and document, just like we did with our products and our people. We want to document the problematic processes. And then I'd say go one step further. What is the severity of these challenges? And what's the value of the severity and the cost? Because as you think about making investments to solve these problems, you want to have a better idea to say, what are our most significant and costly problems as they exist today? All right. So I just also want to encourage you, before we talk, kind of wrap up the Get Curious section, is that there's a lot of brilliance within the GBCA organization. A lot of companies who have taken steps down the road, who have evaluated different systems, who have solved various problems. And I just say, take advantage of the networking opportunities within GBCA to talk with people, to get a better sense for what challenges that they have or are facing, and what are they doing? What are some of the strategic ways that they're trying to leverage technology? How have they overcome maybe internal barriers or resistance to change? Perhaps you could learn something specifically about navigating the change process internally. And even to say, okay, let's just rewind the clock. If you had to do it over again, what would you do? What would you do differently? How would you help me to navigate these things similarly, or to avoid this or that pothole that you inadvertently stepped in? So how are you going to do that? Let me just say, take them to coffee, take them to lunch, take them to breakfast, and just ask questions. I think you'd benefit, you'd enjoy the time and the opportunity, as well as you'd probably get some really good perspective that maybe just when you're in your own organization, you lack some of that perspective. So take advantage of, in the best way, the networking opportunities and the friendship and the community within GBCA. All right, let's keep going. And that's really our next point. After we're curious and do a lot of documentation internally, ask questions of those who are perhaps a little bit further down the road for us externally, get going. And here are 6 ways that your proverbial fork can meet the elephant in your digital transformation journey. Number 1, I just want to encourage everyone, if you're not already there, I want you to move your ERP application, that would be your core financial management and job costing solution, to the cloud. Now, I'm super biased. I sell cloud-based ERP systems for construction companies. But why do we start here? There's all sorts of ways we can start it, but I start here because this is really the platform for everything else that's happening in your organization. And so if you don't have this, you're going to be limited in various ways. Now, what do I mean? What I mean is that cloud ERP can do things that more legacy systems simply can't deliver on. And number one, I've listed it here, is open APIs, application programming interfaces that provide streamlined integration with other applications. In 2026, it's very, very rare that a single application or a single vendor can do everything for you. So you want a platform at the hub that has easy connections and most often integrations that have already been built so that you don't have to create them on your own to be able to connect all the areas of your organization in the most strategic fashion. The other thing that a modern platform provides is things like AP automation. And we'll talk more about going paperless and automating your AP processes and expense management here in a little bit. You also have better reporting tools in the application. You have dashboards and the capability to say, okay, if this is the high level view, how can we break that down? How can we drill down into the details without having to move to a lot of different screens, without having to print reports, or without having to then dump the data and do that manual manipulation process that so many people have just gotten used to over the years. There's a number of other things here for growing companies, especially that have more than one EIN number, the ability to have an elegant multi-entity accounting system, really important and really strategic for growth, especially if you're in acquisition mode. I'll mention a couple more things on this slide before we go to number two. But with a cloud-based application, every customer is on the latest version, which means that you don't have to go through the manual upgrade process again. And perhaps even more significantly is that your vendor is investing all of their resources into one version. Without that, there's multiple versions and the investment is sort of watered down in various versions. And so a cloud ERP, one single version, every time it revs, every single client is on that. And so you know you're getting maximum innovation that's being invested into the version that you're leveraging. Last thing I'll mention on this slide about why cloud ERP as a core and a number one priority is that you're going to be able to get access to AI capabilities, artificial intelligence capabilities that are going to be really transformative. Without that, a lot of the legacy systems just either aren't going to be able to include that or don't have that same level of capability to deliver on this really transformative technology. Okay, so let's talk about AI. Let's talk about artificial intelligence. It's a big topic, and I want to have a number of illustrations for what is possible today in leading construction solutions. Now, before we do that, though, it's time for another poll just to make sure that everyone's tracking, paying attention. And the poll number 3 question is, how sick are you of hearing about AI? It feels like it's brand new and it feels like we've been hearing about it for 100 years. So go ahead and answer. Sorry, I just laughed. Somebody said, enough with the polls. Let's get on with it. Okay. All right. And somebody wants to punch any AI bot in its virtual throat too. Okay. Well, I'm grateful that nobody included what's AI in their response because we've all heard about it. But I really do want to talk about ways that you can leverage it or what the possibilities are to benefit your organization. Okay. As I mentioned earlier, RKL works with Sage applications, and I'm not here to sell Sage, but it's just an example of a vendor who's building in AI technology to their application. There are other construction ERP vendors who are doing the same, so I just share this as an example of what's possible. On one hand, you can have GL outlier detection. It can be scanning your transactions and based on the learning that it's done over time, be able to surface things and say, hey, wait a second, this GL journal entry doesn't look quite right. Or this transaction has a weird combination of chart of accounts and dimensions. We've never seen this before. Are you sure this is correct? One really nice feature to be able to surface potentially problematic things, and you can say, oh, yes, that's a problem, or no, this is fine. And the engine continues to learn and get smarter every single time. The other thing is that with building in Copilot to the financial management solution and construction solution, you get things like search help. Rather than search that is actually not very helpful at all, to be able to type in plain English questions that say, how do I do this? Or help me to accomplish this task. And you'll get really specific and helpful information. Variance analysis, to be able to not just point out the variance, but then explain the next question below, which is why and what does it all mean? Close automation, closing the monthly books. It's sometimes a hassle. It's difficult and often it is problematic. Coordinating the people, knowing what to do next, how to sequence things. There's close automation capabilities so that with all of your modules, it can be sequenced. You can know where the holdup is. You can know what transactions need to be completed or what needs to happen in order for a more efficient monthly close process. My goodness, there's so much value in that. And people have just sort of developed manual systems often to be able to accomplish that. There's a much better way. Now, beyond that, I want to share a few screenshots here of something called the Finance Intelligence Agent. And this is where AI has the potential to be really exciting, that much more exciting than maybe some of these other things that are helpful. But this is where it's really starting to carry some water for the accounting and back office team. So you can see I've got this screenshot, the Copilot pulled up, and just asking a simple question, how many outstanding bills do I have? So you ask that question in plain English to Copilot. Copilot comes back and says, okay, you've got these outstanding bills. You've got, here's the bill number, the amount, the event, the vendor, and the due date. You see those hyperlinks there. Those allow you to be able to click in and see the actual transaction. Second, then, is you can say, okay, this is helpful. Now, give me some analysis on these bills that you've presented. So I can do my research, but rather than me doing the work, tell me more about what you have just presented to me. I want to understand more so I make sure that I'm making a good decision. So then what it can do is pull up an outstanding bill analysis. You can see bills by vendor, bills by category, as well as then highlighting a couple of things. The legal services that you get a payment, early payment discount. Maybe you want to kind of prioritize that one. Or here's one that has some penalties to it that if you don't pay it, you're going to end up paying more than you want. So if you're going to have to prioritize a couple of them, maybe these two are the ones that you want. Well, you can deduce that on your own, or you can ask another question. Based on all that you know, Copilot, which ones should I pay first? And then there's the answer, that legal bill, and then the reporting so that you don't get hit with that late penalty. And then at each point along the way, not just to say, okay, here's the answer, but how did you arrive at this answer? I asked the question, you gave the answer. How did you work this out? Because AI is great, but there's still a healthy level of distrust or a lack of understanding. So the ability not just to get an answer, but then to say, how did you get the answer? And then to validate to say, I understand and agree with that analysis or reason, and then to take the best course of action from there. So that's an example of a finance intelligent agent. This is what's called agentic AI, where the AI is working on your behalf answering questions, doing analysis, and then telling you how it's done. Whereas before, it'd probably take a lot more time and effort and research and validation from the human beings. What's another example? Here's a product that we work with. It's a reporting tool. It's called Sage Enterprise Intelligence or Nectari. Works across a number of industries, including construction. Here's a graph that somebody has pulled up here that's showing all sorts of metrics and graphs you can see there. And then the prompt is, I have a meeting with my CFO tomorrow. Can you give me insights on this dashboard and make me look smart? Okay, hey, let's just be honest with Copilot. Um, we're self-serving. I'm the one who wants to look smart. How can you help me do that? With that sort of a prompt, and this may be difficult to see, but this was just part of the answer that came back with here are some financial performance highlights: strong revenue, profitability, consistent growth over the year, things on liquidity and efficiency, asset performance and returns, and the list goes on. Really, what it is, it just kind of helps you to better understand, wow, these are the types of questions that can be asked. These are the types of answers that come back and the level of detail and specificity that come back in very short order, which provides a great benefit rather than having to do that all on your own, to be able to accelerate that process as well as ultimately make meetings more efficient and for the company to be that much smarter and to make timely and better decisions. So that's on the finance side. Now, what about something that would be related to like field service? Here's an example from one of our vendors that we refer for field and service and work order management, an application called BuildOps. This has to do with those who are in the field. They have completed some work and now they have to do the dreaded summary of their work so that they can produce an invoice and that it can get paid on time. Well, this is difficult. This is difficult for a number of reasons. One, technicians are busy. They've got a lot going on. They want to get to their next call. They hate doing paperwork. Documenting all of this is not easy. So what they can do is they can speak. They can do voice to text and to say this is what has been done. Or it can also pull in just the different things that they've done, the labor hours and the materials and all the rest, to create an automated summary. The thing that I like too is that AI has the ability to sanitize the language. If it's unprofessional or unclear, it has the ability to suggest language that would be much more appropriate to receive on a customer invoice. And then when that happens, there's less work for the technician to do. There's less rework for the back office to do. There's less confusion or reticence for the customer to pay. So you see, just with something like this, there's a lot of downstream benefits in addition to the efficiency that it creates for the field technician. That's one idea. Here's another idea for those that have a fleet of trucks, a fleet of workers who are going and servicing different clients throughout the day. Things like smart dispatch. Every technician has certain levels of experience. Every technician has certain levels of certification or expertise in various areas. How critical is it to know who to assign for each specific work order or service request? For that to be automated with AI, a really significant benefit, making sure that the right technician goes to the right job and the right client so the work is completed as efficiently as possible and it's done right the first time. So keep it right, get it right the first time, keep the work moving. Another example that's from the back office, reducing contract risk with AI Assist. There's some specific tools for construction contract review. The general tools are getting smarter as well. There's some pros and cons to both, but your ability to quickly identify contract risk, standardize contract review, enable contract compliance, all can be enhanced by AI. So that's just one more example from the legal department to be able to review contracts and to be able to do so quickly and thoroughly and keep the process moving. All right. And let me just say, there's many, many more ideas. I want to be sensitive to time here, and so we don't have time for all of them, but hopefully this kind of gets the juices flowing to say these are ideas that are out there and in use today from leading contractors. So you don't have to create things, like it exists today and it's possible. So don't limit yourself in terms of what could we do with AI tools. The sky is truly the limit, and things are only getting better. Okay, poll number 4. What department in your firm would AI benefit the most? Accounting, finance, legal, operations and field service, project management, safety and compliance. Don't even ask the AI bot. All right, I see a split between accounting, finance, and legal, project management. There's really, it's not really a trick question. The answer is all of them could really benefit. It's probably just where is your highest priority for your organization. All right, let's keep moving. So Cloud ERP, number one idea to get going. 2, leveraging AI in different parts of your organization and not limiting the creativity or the ideas as you think about how you can do so. Number 3, maybe we want to kind of dial it back and be a little bit more boring here. Payroll, HR, we were talking about AI. Isn't that amazing? How boring is payroll? Well, the reality is that a lot of construction companies that we speak with are still not leveraging modern technology for payroll and HR. Too many are still processing payroll in-house. Too many have disparate systems for payroll, HR, time entry. And what that means is that you have limited integration and the same information has to be entered multiple times. That's obviously inefficient. That also creates real risk when you're talking about payroll and HR. Managing the complexity of payroll, the compliance, which only seems to get more difficult over the years. Taxes, etc., is it's really difficult to manage all of that in-house, and you no longer have to. The last thing that sometimes is kind of what I call old school payroll is that you have somebody who knows everything. They've been doing it for many decades, and it's like, man, at some point they're going to retire or win the lottery, and then it represents a real risk when you don't have that internal knowledge. The great news is that you can reduce risk and increase efficiency. Modern construction payroll and HR platforms really give you the best of both worlds. You no longer have to rely on yourselves to do it right. There are tried and true and tested systems that combine things like payroll and HR and time entry and compliance and reporting and benefits and expense management and really full featured systems built to handle the complexity of construction payroll. I've got a bunch of those bullet points listed there. I just want to encourage you, if you're facing some of the challenges that are on the left side of this screen, take an opportunity, ask questions of people. What are they doing? How are they benefiting from a newer, more modern approach that is really not only increasing efficiency and reducing risk, but it's also providing employees with a much better user experience. And as we know, in a tight labor market, the employee user experience really matters. So what tools do they have that are typically mobile phone based to be able to keep track of all of their payroll, all of their HR, to be able to communicate effectively with the right people? These are capabilities of modern payroll and HR systems that have a lot of benefits, and it's definitely worth exploring. Next that we want to talk about, number 4, is boosting the collaboration between the field and the office. This is often an area where the communication is poor. It's very manual, maybe text-based communication, emails, phone calls. And so the more that you can give visibility to what is happening with projects to your field-based workers, the better that they'll be equipped to make good decisions. So some sort of project management tool that interfaces with your back office accounting and job costing system, we would be a big advocate for. Everybody knows Procore. Procore is an amazing system. It's not necessarily right for every organization. So there are a lot of possibilities out there, some that are perhaps designed for smaller organizations. But I would say consider that and consider the benefit of collaboration with your field, with your office personnel, as well as all the key project stakeholders within and across the company boundaries. All right, number 5, reducing reliance on paper. We talked about paper. We talked about getting curious, identifying where you see too much paper. Folks, it is 2026. That means that we can all do a better job of reducing and eliminating paper from various parts of the organization. Here, I'm not going to read it on the screen here, but this is my public service announcement to say, please identify where you have too much paper and processes that perhaps have been in place for many, many years that is like, well, again, this is just sort of the way that we do it. In so many cases, it doesn't make sense. There really is a better way to reduce and in some cases eliminate paper. Now, there's so many benefits from it, not the least of which is fewer paper cuts. But where can you start to identify and eliminate it? I just got a few examples, and there's probably a dozen more that we won't take the time to list today. Purchasing and accounts payable automation. Let's just talk about AP automation. The ability to get invoices into an email box, to be able to read the information on those invoices and those line items, to be able to validate that as opposed to having to enter it every time, and then route for approval. That could be in the office, that could be out of the office. Those that need to approve it can make sure that the coding is correct, and they don't need to see the piece of paper. They can just pull it up on their phone, and then they can approve it. And either it can be a multiple step approval process or a simple approval process. After it's approved and you have an audit of that approval process, you can pay that invoice when you need to. Employee expense management. We talked about that random Home Depot receipt. Who does this belong to? What's it for? What project and cost code should we code it to? A really big challenge. Credit card reconciliation. A lot of our clients that we work with have hundreds and hundreds of credit card charges every month. There are ways that you can drastically reduce the manual effort on the front end and on the back end. Yes, it's going to take some training. Is it worth it? The answer is yes. You can train, and the systems that are in place today for even the most grizzled veterans who don't want to use technology, really, really simple, and that dramatically increases accuracy and efficiency with your credit card charges. A couple others, automating change orders, digitally documenting things, requesting things, approving things. Again, this shouldn't take paper moving from place to place. We should be able to do these things digitally, which keeps the digital record and increases accuracy and efficiency. And last, leverage e-takeoff tools. Really important, again, the opportunity to be able to take advantage of that as opposed to relying on paper. So let me just say this one more time in case that is a completely overwhelming thought, is that just like the digital journey, reducing paper in your organization is a journey as well. One step at a time, or I talked about climbing that tree one branch at a time. Focus on one area. Seek to get better. Find out how you can eliminate that, or perhaps there's a solution that can eliminate or drastically reduce multiple areas at the same time. This is a good place to start sometimes if you don't know where else to start. A lot of great systems that typically are going to provide a lot of bang for your buck. All right, that's number 5. And then the last item here on our get going exhortation list is to push the digital envelope. Push the digital envelope. Now, I mentioned that RKL specifically focuses on back office accounting processes, accounting, job cost, document management, all these things that we've talked about. However, there are some things that are more field-based that I just want to mention here. Again, this is all about getting the creative juices flowing, maybe dropping some seeds or ideas across your organization. How can you do that to utilize technology that is available today? So I'll just quickly list 6 of them. Building information modeling, go from 2D to 3D, a lot of benefits there. Augmented reality, virtual reality. It's not just Mark Zuckerberg and the folks at Meta. There are real applications for construction companies to be able to use this to be able to better visualize things with their jobs. Job site drones for surveillance, for safety, for documenting things in new ways that are much easier and less expensive. Robotics and automation. Love the team at Dusty Robotics who's printing digital models on the job site floor. Really good stuff that can drive some automation and projects forward. The Internet of Things, putting sensors either attached to people for wearables to make sure that you're encouraging and promoting safety. You're monitoring, you're doing hazard monitoring in building, even within concrete, as an example, or additional ways to do site surveillance. Fifth is modular and prefab construction. Again, that can just help to automate things on site if you're prefabbing things off site. And then advanced construction materials. It's not right in every single situation, but worth exploring to say in certain situations, could some of these newer technologies be of great benefit to your organization and the clients whom you serve? So, what's the last action item here? Learning more about these cutting edge technologies, seeking to educate others in your organization. Again, if these are things you're not familiar with, there's organizations who are doing great work to educate people about them, as well as your fellow GBCA members are probably a great source of information and inspiration.
Really great information, Mark. Thanks very much.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. And last thing I'll just say is if there's anybody here that is listening and would like more specific insights that are specifically construction related, we're happy to be able to be a resource to you via newsletter or contact us in any way. Again, we love being a part of the GCA. We love the community, the collaboration, the really effective sharing and the long-term relationships that come through an organization like this. So any way that we can be a resource to you, please don't hesitate to let us know.